The thing about the contemplative spirituality is like it's so hard to talk about and put into words because it's something very deep and yet transcendent, and it's something that you just surrender to, and it can be difficult to come up with words to explain it. I would say that that union with God is something that just is. The problem is that we're not aware of that union, and the contemplative prayer practices help us to become more aware, more mindful of the fact that we are in God. God is in us. We can't exist without the life of God, and to recognize that union that I think Jesus came to really illuminate for us and help us in that famous passage in the Gospel of John where Jesus talks about, he's praying to the Father, right? And just pleading that we would be one with God and one with one another, just as Jesus is one with God and God is with Jesus, or the Father is with Jesus. And I think as we give ourselves over to these practices of discipline that strip away the masks that we wear, the defense mechanisms that we naturally have, the ego that competes for our authentic, true self a lot of times, as all of that gets stripped away, we become more aware of our union with God, and then in our active life, we can't help but live more fully in that union so that we're relating to one another differently, that we're relating to one another in a way that brings glory and honor to God rather than in a way that exploits and is about the ego kind of proving itself in relationship to others. So contemplative prayer really helps us sort of come to terms with our unconscious motivations. It sort of reveals some of those unconscious motivations so that, I often think it's easy to see this in play in history, Christian history, where, let's pick the Crusades or the Inquisition or slavery in the southern United States and all that. These Christians were like good-hearted people who thought they were doing the right thing, thought they were following after God, thought they were doing God's will. And yet, now in hindsight, we can totally see that they were mistaken and they were not following after God, and they weren't living in the way of the Spirit in relationship to their neighbor and all of that. And so contemplative spirituality really helps us to surrender those unconscious motivations that we're not aware of. It brings them into light. We're able to let them go so that our motivations are more pure, and they're more from that place of union with God rather than kind of distorted with our own darkness and ego that deceives and looks out for itself more than the other. So yeah, it's hard to put into words and explain. I think the unconscious motivations part is something that largely in Christian experience we have not been taught a way of praying that really allows that transformational work of the Spirit to dismantle those unconscious motivations. Largely our prayers are filled with words, and they're guided by the mind, which there's a place for that. But when the mind is constantly in control and we don't learn how to surrender, it can be difficult to be able to live from that place of true self, that place of the life of Christ, because that old creation, that old self is largely in control. So sometimes we think we know how to pray, but we might be actually motivated by some unconscious motivations of selfishness or pride or superiority or inferiority in the ways that we're thinking and praying and asking God to intervene in our life. And so by learning to surrender and let go, the Spirit has more room in us, in our body, our mind, our spirit, to live and move and have its way with us in the world. And I think it's really key. I think these practices are key to seeing true redemptive impact in the world, where the Spirit of God can really live through us and be about the Father's business, you know.